Welcome folks to beautiful Rio de Janeiro on this beautiful day. You notice this video looks 100 times better than the previous because I've changed my phone. What a difference, huh? So it's just me today, and well, you know, this channel. This channel is all about anything, you know. We laugh, we joke, talk about anything. And well, I've been in Brazil 6 years now, and yeah, Bigfoot, folks, Bigfoot-Sasquatch. I don't know if you believe in this, if you know about it, but it's true. They exist everywhere on every continent. They are there. There's encounter stories for hundreds of years. And I've always wondered, because Brazil is such a massive country, you know, there's not only the Amazon rainforest, there's forests all over the country. Even here in Rio, there's forests. They could even be in there with those forests. But it was about 2014. My brother, I think with my brother, he said I was talking to him. He said, "Have you heard about missing 411? About these mysterious disappearances of people in the national parks in America?" So I said, "Oh, okay, I'll give it a look. That sounds strange." And I looked into it, and for some reason, I just saw a link for this Bigfoot podcast, and I couldn't believe it. These people every week coming on with their encounter stories, because I remember as a child we had encyclopedia books. I remember the one with mysteries and monsters or something. You had the Loch Ness Monster, you had Bigfoot, they had the Patterson Gimlin picture of Paddy, and we had, what, as a child you had that movie Harry and the Hendersons. And you know, since then I hadn't given it one more thought. So for the last 6 years I have an interest in this topic, and at last I found a Brazilian Bigfoot-Sasquatch encounter story that I think tops everything else. So I'm gonna try and read this for you now. And first I'd just like to thank my Brazilian friends for helping me, for translating it into English for me. So, right, folks, I'm going to bear with me now. I'm going to read this encounter story. Okay, here it goes. So, a man was hunting in a large forest somewhere in Brazil. I'm not sure where it was. And the old man of his village, they said that the forest was not a man's place after the sun went down. He never paid much attention to these old stories, but was always out of the forest before dark anyhow, as the treacherous old logging road with its steep sides in places was not to be driven on at night. This particular day his hunting had been excellent, and with the euphoria of it all, time had run away from him. As he was making his way back to his truck, and with daylight fast disappearing, he knew he would have to hunker down in his truck and leave at first light. It was hot as hell inside his truck, as he had closed all the windows to keep the mosquitoes out. But after navigating all day through the forest with machete in hand, he knew that sleep would not be a problem. Sure enough, he drifted off, and sometime after he was awakened by what sounded like gunshots. Alarmed, he looked all around him, out into the darkness, but now these gunshots appeared to be coming from both sides of the forest, either side of the logging road. Then the noise intensified, now more akin to a bulldozer ripping through the forest. Confused that he could not see no lights, and terrified that he could be mowed down as the noise grew nearer, he turned on his truck, its full lights beaming, as he started sounding the truck's horn to get whatever this was attention. All of a sudden the noise just stopped, and the forest went silent. Not a sound of a cricket, insect, nothing. This spooked him even more, as the forest is never silent, especially at night. Now that's a common theme in Bigfoot encounters, folks. The forest just goes silent when these creatures are around, which I thought was interesting. Okay, so Let me continue. A feeling of dread, a sixth sense if you like, came over him as he began to feel that he was being hunted. He turned the engine off, kept the lights on, and got his machete. He sat staring ahead as the truck's lights lit the road ahead. Then the silence was no more as a huge cracking sound came echoing from the forest on one side, like someone had just hit a large tree with a strong branch, then followed by the same sound on the other side. This is what those gunshots must have been, he thought. But he couldn't reflect any longer, as within seconds the shushing sound of a large object careering through the air was heard, followed by two large thuds. As if in perfect unison, the thuds hit the logging road at either end of the truck. Panicking, he struggled to see out the front window as the dust of the logging road had been whipped into a frenzy. As it began to settle, he could begin making it out. Two huge trees lay across the road. His heart pounded. He was trapped, and he figured there must also be trees behind the truck, even though the logging road in that direction came to an abrupt end a kilometer away, and Mother Nature was quickly beginning to reclaim it. What or whoever did this was giving him no chances of escape, as those stories of the old men of the village began flooding his brain. He began to pray as his predicament became all too clear. He slouched forward, eyes closed and sobbing, as his forehead now unintentionally sounded the truck's horn. That feeling of dread, as if it couldn't intensify any further, did. His sixth sense told him he was no longer alone. Slowly lifting his head, the sight of two joined hairy legs came into view, the massive torso and shoulders, and with muscles only seen in the likes of comic books. The male genitalia were in full view. The creature was staring at him, a gorilla-type face, but with his eyes full of thought and emotion. Sad, he thought. The creature looked sad. He couldn't move and take his gaze from the creature as the shock gripped his body, and his brain tried in vain to process just what he was seeing. The creature's expression changed as it looked to its side. It now looked worried, but worried for what, he thought. The creature then turned and put his back to him. All of a sudden, a sound more familiar to him, and one that his brain could process, filled the air, as splinters of broken glass ricocheted against the truck's interior. The man turned as his passenger seat door was ripped out, and at such a speed that it didn't seem possible. He dropped his machete, now sobbing uncontrollably. He was going to die as he thought of his wife and two young children. The sobbing was interrupted as the sound of deep breathing filled the truck. He slowly opened his eyes and looked forward. The creature was still at the front of the truck, but the deep breathing sounds from within the truck remained. He slowly turned his head as those sinister-looking eyes fixed upon him. Pure hatred is what this creature was emitting. The fact that this creature's face appeared less monkey-like and more human, doing little to relieve the moment. The man looked down as he began to wet himself. The creature let out a sigh, as if to voice his pleasure at reducing a human to such a thing. The man came to, blood streamed down his face. He was in what appeared to be the creature's home place. Many of the creatures, both male, female and children, were there in a scene that reminded him of indigenous tribes, but there was no fire. Amazingly, everything was lit up in a bright greenish glow that covered the trees and forest canopy. The forest here was cool and with no mosquitoes in sight. The creature's eyes seemed to reflect this light also. The creatures danced while some sat suckling babies. The man had been placed under a tree away to the sides and in the shadows. His head was throbbing.